Hi friends, I'm back with another time lapse, this time of a portrait study. June was a tricky month for me and my art. I felt super stuck in a lot of ways, which was likely a combination of having a lot of client work, which I am very thankful for, kind of being in the gap, which artists, I'm sure you know it well and also hate, but also just having a lot of work at Hamilton. Again, super thankful, just overwhelmed. It doesn't quite describe how I felt and how I'm still feeling a bit, but we're getting there slowly but surely. That being said, I turned to studies when I had a chance to sit and paint. On one hand, I knew I had some skills I wanted to work towards improving, especially because a lot of client work right now, I'm doing a series of portraits for this person. And on the other hand, it was a really nice way to get art in, but kind of turn off my brain while doing it. The portrait studies I did were a nice way to feel like I was being productive and completing something, and at the same time I could focus on just a single reference and trying to translate that into a piece of art. It was just a nice little change of pace. So with this piece, laying down a good foundation of a sketch was important to me. Of course, I didn't record that process. I rarely remember to record the sketching, mostly because I don't usually go into a piece thinking, yes, I want to record this process. I just sort of go, oh, maybe I should record something for YouTube and my Patreon. So here we are. Anyway, I also don't think it's like quite as interesting to watch like the sketching, but maybe one day. But having a good sketch foundation was something that I wanted to focus on with this study. I'm not like super consistent with my sketching style when it comes to my paintings. There are certain pieces I think do better with having a loose foundation, and others that are best completed with this level of specificity. This sketch definitely helped me to identify and really define some of the plane shifts and more obvious lighting choices I would be working with, and it just helped me make the process of painting that hand a little bit easier too by really just figuring it out from the get-go. But even with that, I am trying to go about my rendering with a better process, I guess, because I don't really have much of a process, but I'm working towards it. Lately, I like to begin by laying down the color, and after I have that local color base, I like to go in with a big airbrush, like super soft, super big, no detailing at all, to begin adding other hues and values. And keeping my brush big and soft has been a huge help with my rendering lately. It kind of lets me build and sculpt rather than trying to focus on details right away. And rather than focusing on immediately a defined shadow shape, like if I have an overview of like where a shadow is going to be, then I can really refine that and again sculpt it rather than start out with it in that shape, if that makes any sense. And honestly, by like slowly sharpening my brush, both in the hardness and size, I find myself getting a smoother render that I can then go in and texture in detail as I like. I did paint underneath my sketch to lay down my initial shadows and highlights, again with that really big, soft, fluffy airbrush. But lately, I've ultimately ended up rendering over top the sketch. This lets me toggle the sketch on and off, see if I'm defining what I need to define. Basically, if I have to rely on a sketch to make something read, then that's going to possibly cause problems or frustrations down the line. And eventually I do like merge or just delete the sketch once I've painted over enough to have the specificity that I want. And I used to merge the sketch onto my base of shadows and highlights like kind of right away or earlier on in my process. And it worked for me for a while, but where I'm trying to head with my art, I found that it was making my coloring a bit more muddy and my rendering a little less natural. And I was also struggling to get rid of like a line look fully, and this has been a really good way by painting over top and not using the sketch in that way to achieve a softer render. And this is something I've been working on in mentorship because I didn't really realize how much I was relying essentially on a line to indicate certain things like the shapes and details of an eye, a nose, a mouth. And by avoiding using a sketch like merged right on top, by avoiding having that be a crucial part of, the layers and the piece, I'm able to focus more, as I should, on the shadows and the highlights to achieve my detailing. And the shadows and the highlights are going to create the look of what essentially a line was doing. And I'm still learning to make this a thing that I do. I'm still learning to implement this. It's definitely not there fully yet, and like some days it works out better than others, but it's something that I'm being very intentional about and really focusing my energy on. This piece was about 3.5 hours of work, so it was definitely on the quicker side, even for just a portrait. And there's something nice about working directly with a single reference and not having to make creative decisions. So the process can be a bit more streamlined because of that. Like I have my visual reference and library right there, one image. Also with the bigger Cintiq, it's nicer because it can be up. And I still have room to paint. So that's been very lovely. And since I had also done other portrait studies, which I learned from, and, repeat, that's how you learn and adapt, and a skill, becomes more second nature. So I was naturally getting a little bit faster as well. Some of my goals with my portraits, because again, I'm working on quite a few, and I definitely want to continue to do more portrait studies, and I've been warming up with some like quick speed paint portraits as well. But I definitely want to become better at nailing proportions without having to move things around a ton. I feel like sometimes I just spend so long in liquefy or warp or transform, and I just want to have a little bit of a better grasp on where I want to place things and like how they should be placed. Obviously there's nothing wrong with using liquefy or warp or transform, but sometimes, some days I'm like, wow, I really am relying on this quite a bit. I also want to get better at softening the shading of the face and really work towards containing my values. Sometimes I can just really lean super heavy into certain shadows or certain highlights, and I just want to like really get that nice, smooth, soft value range that I really, am impressed by in other artists' portrait work. And I also want to be able to adapt a style that has like that smooth and soft rendering that I do like, but combined also with some detailing and texture and like those like little things that sort of push it into a next level, if that makes sense. And this is like something that's just totally a personal thing. I want to find that balance, and sort of like that balance of like realism versus like super painterly. So yeah, something in that. And by doing these studies that are more realistic, like this is arguably one of my more realism-based pieces. By doing these, I'm able to hopefully eventually shift into taking it into more of like my style, whatever that is. But yeah, I'm quite proud of this study. I think I did strike a decent balance between like smooth painting and textured painting. You might notice in this time lapse that I do work with various brushes that aren't just a soft and a hard round. For the longest time, that's kind of all I was using. And honestly, for the longest time, all I was using was a hard round. Although we all remember the phase where everyone literally lived and died by DG main. Haven't really used that in a while, but yeah, after I went through my DG main phase, I shifted to just like a hard round, and now I'm getting back into using some like different brushes. I don't really tweak any of my brushes myself because that is big brain and I am smooth brain, but I find that Fernanda Suarez's brushes have a lot of variety and they're a really good set. If you sign up for her Patreon, you get them. She might have them on her Gumroad, I'm not sure, but I do subscribe to her Patreon, and so she always has that as a link. You get a ton of brushes and I love them. And she has several different texture brushes that I like to go between and I use within this piece. So you might recognize that there are some different like brush outline sizes that you see, sizes and shapes that you see as I work. So this reference is one that I got off of Unsplash. If you're an artist and you're looking for reference images, I highly recommend it. They are free to use and also high res, which is really nice. I do love Pinterest still. Like Pinterest is good for, you know, very specific things, but I love going on Unsplash and just, you know, searching through all of the images and, you know, finding some good references to use that can jumpstart some ideas and creativity. I've also been downloading a lot of like stock reference packs from various artists and people. Howard Lyon has a ton that are really, really wonderful. So I've been stocking up on those, really just trying to build my library of references because I'm realizing more and more how important that is, and it can be really hard to have to rely on trying to take images of yourself or finding like the exact right pose that you need. So I figure if I have more of a reference library, I think that will help me in the end, but that is neither here nor there. With this portrait, I found this reference on Unsplash. I just loved the expression. I loved like the like freckles and like freckle formation on her forehead and like that hand against the neck. Like I just think that's so pretty, and I think that that's like a good like hand pose and like idea that I can implement going further. So yeah, I had found that reference on Unsplash, very, very fond of it. It was very fun to paint. And yeah, just going through the motions of, you know, trying to get better and keep my mental health somewhat up. But yeah, these studies have been really helping and a really nice thing to go back to. I feel like every couple of months or like twice a year, I go through a phase where I'm like, I just have to study portraits. I like feel like I lose sight of how to paint a face. And I was sort of in that phase. So it's been nice to give myself the time to build this skill. And again, like having a series of like portrait commissions to work on right now, that's just something that I wanted to kind of focus my energy on, and so here we are. Anyway, there's a bit more video left, and I am, as per usual, running out of things to say. I can only ramble for so long, and I don't really have a lot of like specific process things to talk about, especially in a study. So these are kind of like time lapse with a combination of just artist journal thought moments. So I hope you enjoy them. As usual, if you have any questions or things that you want me to talk about specifically, things in my process or anything like that, especially if you're a patron, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to do my best to talk about what you want to hear. Yeah, and until then, I'll just keep rambling and giving my thoughts on sort of like mentally where I was at while I worked on this. But I do hope that you enjoy this time lapse. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment, leave a like, just say hi, let me know. Let me know your thoughts, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this video and some chill lo-fi vibes, and have a good rest of your day, evening, night, afternoon, work, whatever you're at, wherever you're at. And thank you so much for watching. As always, I truly, truly appreciate it and appreciate your support. Thank you.